they haven't been in front of people. They've never stood in front of a family where they've had 2 strokes. It's much bigger. And even when you talk about the animal kingdom and the planet, the battle is much more successful if you can bring people as opposed to pull people. If you can have a conversation as opposed to hammer away.
Everybody wants to go to a resort or a spa or go to a therapist. I think eating good food is the best therapy.
Do it in your home with measurable small increments, and you will feel yourself change as a human being internally and externally.
Absolutely.
Hey everyone, this is Jenna Matecki from Plant-Based News. I really hope that you enjoy this video, which is an interview with neurologists, Drs. Ayesha and Dean Sherzai. If you get something out of this video, you will definitely get something out of a free Premier Summit, linked below. The summit features Team Sherzai as well as 24 different experts in the fields of lifestyle medicine and conscious living. There's a quick trailer coming up about this premier event, and if you hit the link in the video description, you will get free access. The first question that I asked Team Sherzai is, why do they, as neurologists, recommend a plant-based diet? Enjoy.
Do you want to have a clear memory and a sharp mind for your entire life? Major studies show us you can prevent brain diseases, including Alzheimer's, especially if you start right now. And the #1 factor that's in your control is the food on your plate. With the Brain Superfoods Guidebook, you'll find out what the studies actually tell us about the foods that are good for your brain. And you'll get the latest neuroscience breakthroughs, so you can take immediate action for a clearer mind and a healthier body. When you enter your name and email right on this page, you'll get your free guidebook, and you'll also gain free access to the 10th annual 2021 Food Revolution Summit. My dad and colleague, best-selling author John Robbins, and I are bringing you this summit because we're on a mission. We want to help as many people as possible stay healthy during the pandemic and beyond. During this free online global event, my dad will personally interview 25 of the most brilliant, revolutionary experts as they share this year's breaking updates about food and health. You'll leave the Food Revolution Summit inspired and empowered with trustworthy information that you can put to use right away. Just enter your name and email right on this page to join in the free summit and to get your free Brain Superfoods Guidebook. The truth is that you were meant to thrive at every age and every stage of life. No matter what happens in the world of pandemics and politics, this is the time right now to take charge of your health. So go ahead and join us for free. Get your guidebook and join us in the summit by entering your name and email right now. I'll see you in the summit. Let's do this.
So our journey started about 17 years ago when Ayesha and I met in a party. And our first conversation was about dementia. Initially, we went to UCSD, which was the #1 neuroscience program in the country at the time. We did the esoteric work. I came from NIH prior to that, National Institutes of Health. And we did all the work. Ayesha did several publications with fMRIs, which are incredibly cool tools. And I did clinical trials and others. And repeatedly, we will see that the mouse models would show evidence, but when translated to humans, it never actually translated to outcome. In fact, 400 mouse models that showed evidence of success never translated to humans. So right around that time, we decided that we wanted to take a different path. So we took the risky path. We went to Loma Linda because it's one of the only blue zones, healthiest place in the world, the Seventh-day Adventist study. I started as the director of Brain Institute there and started research, both in the clinic and in the communities. And we've been involved in 3 of the largest studies, the Adventist Health Study, the California Teacher Study, for which Ayesha won the Youngest Researcher Award a few years ago, and the Northern Manhattan Study, Columbia University Study, which Ayesha did her fellowship in. And in all of them, when you look at nutrition and brain health, be it stroke, because Ayesha is also a stroke specialist, or dementia, repeatedly, whether it's Mind Diet or Dash Diet and others, the dominant feature when you do factor analysis, which is what are the important factors? the dominant one is not chicken. Like there's an element of chicken in my diet.
Or cheese.
Or cheese.
Or wine in the Mediterranean diet.
It's not those.
No.
Not even. It's in spite of those things. And what's the dominant element? It's plants, 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 plants. So to us, which we actually have coined the term preventive neurologists, it's not at all controversial. It's not even close to even, the latest paper came out, Mediterranean versus plant-based. It's not even a close comparison.
Right.
The part of the Mediterranean diet that's effective is the plant-based component.
Right.
So you're actually taking an adulterated version of something and a thing that is beneficial, and then you're matching them. So there's actually no question for us that all neurological conditions, stroke, Ayesha published the largest paper in the country, California teacher study.
Right. And I was interested in seeing what it meant to consume a Mediterranean diet and what parts of the Mediterranean diet was helpful. And it's always plants. And when you see the scoring system for these dietary patterns, it's, you get a higher score when you eat more unprocessed plants, and you get a lower score when you eat sources of saturated fats, which are meat, chicken, dairy products like cheese. And so the more people ate plants, the lower their risk of stroke was, which is incredible. And you see that pattern over and over again.
Speaking of patterns, I would like to be in the best possible position to not have dementia like Alzheimer's when I get older. It terrifies me. What are some good habits that I should start now so that I can be in the best possible position in the future?
One of the most important things as individuals and as a community that we can do is to reconsider what we eat, because our food, the nutritional patterns that we follow, is the most important environmental factor. It is something that we put in our body 3-4 times a day if you're eating that much. And everything that goes into our body either makes our brain or breaks our brain. Now, the brain is an incredible organ. It's only about 3 pounds, 2% of the body's weight. And at any moment, it can consume 25% of the body's energy. And, we always joke and say the rest of the body is there to support the brain. And this tiny little organ that feels like hard jello when you hold it in your hand, it is essentially not just an organ, it is us. It is who we are. It is our personality, our emotions, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about others. It's about love and art and history. And for us to be able to take care of this beautiful of organs every single day, and to know that we are going to be able to prevent diseases like Alzheimer's disease, why wouldn't we do it? And again, study after study comes back and tells us that if people consume a plant-based, unprocessed plant-based diet, their risk of Alzheimer's disease goes down significantly. We have studies from, for example, from Rush University, where a MIND diet, which is predominantly a plant-based diet, when people consume that diet, the plant-based component of it, they reduce their risk of Alzheimer's disease by 53%. We have studies from the Kaiser Permanente study that showed that if saturated fats, which are found in meat, chicken, and dairy, if they're consumed less, the chances of developing dementia falls to, you reduce it by 57%. And that's just making changes to your diet. Imagine if you include things like good sleep or exercise and stress management and keeping one's mind active. But that's the power of diet on brain health.
If you could travel back in time and go to a dinner party with your grandparents, what would you make sure to share with them about your work?
Wow, I'm going to get emotional about that. Our grandparents, we both had grandparents who are our role models. And we lost them to Alzheimer's disease. They were brilliant people. My grandfather was a surgeon who went into politics, and he was responsible for rewriting the Constitution, and he worked towards women's empowerment. And Dean's grandfather was a minister of education, highly educated person. But despite their education and their cognitive prowess, Alzheimer's hit them really hard, because we saw, as children, and we heard that they didn't necessarily have the healthiest lifestyles, and they ate poorly. I remember my grandfather had processed meat all the time, and so is Dean's situation. And so if we go back and if we have a conversation with our grandfathers, I would tell him about so much hope for the diseases that he, as a surgeon and as a physician, encountered, that back then they would just throw up their hands in the air and say, well, there's really nothing that we can do about it, and give him hope and give him a picture of the possibilities that we have, whether it's public health or medicine in general.
The first conversation we had was about our grandparents. And the first thing we remember is the suffering in a very dignified way, because Alzheimer's takes little bits of you. It's a thief that takes little bits of you. You see the discomfort where they can't remember something in front of a crowd, where they say something wrong in front of a group or family. That anxiety and fear, and people who are powerful, is the worst thing to see. So for them to know that, for them and for many others that they had seen prior to them, this can be avoided by simply changing what's on our plates. Not as a judgment. This is not a judgment. We don't believe in judgment. We believe in positive, beautiful change on our plates.
Can you please share the story about how you both became plant-based? How did you do it? How did you give up Philly cheesesteaks?
The journey was actually pretty interesting. It was in Afghanistan, where I was running the whole healthcare system there, and Ayesha was with the Doctors Without Borders, and we met. And my diet just a year prior to that was all protein, breakfast, lunch, dinner, in order to lose weight. And I, for some reason, I had migraines every week.
Oh, they were so bad.
The kind of migraines that would debilitate me. I mean, we're talking, I couldn't move from the floor. One time I was in a train station in Washington. It was so bad that they couldn't even move me to get me to the car. I had to just rest on the ground and all that happens with the migraines, which is throwing up and everything else. Ever since going plant-based, this is not an exaggeration. We're very adamant about being accurate to the data. I've never had migraines since then. This is 17 years ago?
Right,
yeah.
17 years.
So again, that's not everybody's experience. That's my experience. Mm-hmm. Anecdotes do not science make. I want to make sure that we say that, but that was my experience. But in Afghanistan, we because they made me deputy minister of health. I was at 30 something years old and deputy minister, and they said you have to sacrifice sheep.
That's the custom there. When something good happens, they sacrifice an animal there for you. And
I had just come from Bethesda, Maryland. They actually sacrificed the sheep. There were two of them, mates, in front of me, and one of them actually died, and the other one actually started nudging it, trying to move it. It was an incredible eureka moment. It moved me. Of course, emotions can be the mover, but thought has to be what has to. So after that, I read book after book after book after book. And in the middle of Afghanistan, we had conversations. In fact, our first year of dating was about these conversations.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And we became plant-based vegans, vegetarians initially, and then quickly we transitioned. Our kids were born as completely plant-based, and we've never looked back. But as it happens, a plant-based life is good for animals, good for environment, and it is completely in sync with the science.
Right. Yeah.
And we're very adamant about that. When the science doesn't match, we're okay. We say that right now, for example, with fish, although we don't eat fish, although we think there might be toxins in fish, and there are, we know, not just mercury and lead, but another 30,000 chemicals we've added that we never check. But the data is not strong one way or another. We stand by the science. But across the board, as far as the rest, the data is so strong that plant-based life is the healthiest by far at all ages.
Yep. You've mentioned that looking at the world of nutrition and lifestyle medicine in a binary way is both dangerous and unhealthy. Can you please explain why?
Data can be absolute, although it's not usually, but data can be absolute. But humans are not. Human application is not. And sometimes going from seminar to seminar, from talk to talk, we lose ourselves in the binary nature of things. When I go to communities, when Ayesha goes to communities, if we say eat just this way because it's said so, and don't take the complexity into consideration, we will not only have failed that person, but what we call as a nuclear landscape. When people come to you, when they listen to you in any venue, in any situation, they're not calling you a leader, but you're leading them. Leader has an incredible responsibility, not for that conversation, but for the wake that it leaves behind. If you approached it in a wrong way, in an arrogant way, in a top-down way, in a non-listening way, and not in a communicative way, and not a receptive way, or applied something that was not cognizant of their limitations, their resources, you failed. That person might be so kind and gentle that they might not tell you, but they're going to go home. First of all, they're going to feel terrible about themselves.
Yeah.
They're going to fail it. And they'll not approach anybody like you for a long time. You've created a nuclear landscape of leadership. The next person can't go there. So when we see talking heads starting fights over nutrition, over small little matters like olive oil, they haven't been in front of people. They've never stood in front of a family where they've had 2 strokes. It's much bigger. And even when you talk about the animal kingdom and the planet, the battle is much more successful if you can bring people as opposed to pull people. If you can have a conversation as opposed to hammer away. That's why it's pivotal that we don't approach human endeavors in binary ways, that we approach human endeavors and the complexity that it deserves.
You've also said that moderation is one of your least favorite words. We could then take that non-binary approach and stretch that logic and say, well, everything in moderation.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So moderation is essentially a doorway for you to cheat, isn't it? Or for you to do something that you want to do. Everything in moderation. It's important for us to understand where the person is coming from. Why are they saying that they want to eat things in moderation? Is it because the habit change is difficult? Or is it because they're not really sold on the idea of the thing that they have to eat for better health? So the source matters quite a bit as well. We come to it in multiple ways. First, give them the picture. This is what the data shows. Don't listen to me. Don't even listen to another talking head. Just don't even read a book. Here's what the data shows. The data shows that there's really no moderation. The more you do of say, for example, a plant-based diet, the better you'll be. And if you choose to be somewhere in between the 2 ends of the spectrum, then that's your choice, but don't expect to be very healthy. But also don't fool yourself. I think it's important for you to make small little steps of success towards that ultimate goal and achieve those successes, because there's no bigger dopamine hit for the brain than to succeed in those small little steps towards that ultimate goal. So we understand human behavior, we understand how the brain works, but we also want to hold people accountable to say, don't fool yourself. You are doing an amazing job moving towards that direction. Just check off small little boxes until you get there, and get rid of the word moderation or even motivation, because motivation is essentially a fact or a structure of the brain where you get the dopamine hit when you succeed in small steps. It's not something magical that just comes to you. I feel motivated.
Yeah. You're beautifully stated. I fully agree. The way to and to square that circle of avoiding moderation, yet at the same time maintaining complexity, is, as Ayesha said, this is the direction that's been shown. The optimal to date is this. And even if you had done it the other way, you would have failed them, because all of this. I mean, let's go to San Bernardino.
Right.
Where the average meal is a fast food, which is egg and bacon and cheese, and then some burgers and at lunchtime and
soda
and all of this stuff. So, and then going from that food, which is full of fats, trans fats, saturated fats, sugar, salt, processed elements, and then we come here and say, no sugar, no salt, no bread, no processed
Refined
bread,
carbohydrates,
no
yeah.
refined carbohydrates, none of this stuff, and go 100% plant-based tomorrow. That's failure. What we do say is the optimal is whole food plant-based, and here's the data. But that's okay. Here's your success. We're going to take small incremental successes, which are going to feel so good, because every time you conceptually or literally check the box, I got rid of sugar this month. Initially, it's going to be very hard because it's withdrawal. It's actually an addiction withdrawal. But then once you get past that hump, people go to these resorts for cleansing. There's nothing like that cleansing.
Yeah.
Oh, and then this month, I got rid of saturated fat, or not even saturated fat, cheese.
Right. I got rid of cheese.
Cheese,
Yeah.
that specifically. And initially it was hard. And by the way, I didn't just get rid of it. In its place, Ayesha showed me that I can get a plant-based cheese that's got almost no saturated fat and no, and so I'm not feeling deprived.
Yeah.
That checkbox. Oh, that's like, now you're revving. Then the next month, oh, you know what? I got rid of red meat. Oh, by the way, chicken is bad too. I didn't know that. Yeah, chicken too. And now I'm just stuck with fish. Oh my goodness. I actually feel physically better. It's 3 months later, I feel physically better. That's the pattern of how we think that you get rid of moderation, which is not, but at the same time, create a complex but tangible, achievable goals that are not just building you physically, but they're empowering you as a person.
Mm.
How many of the diets actually succeed? The number is 15%, but reality, or the number they quote, it's actually lower than. Why? Because it's an all or none.
Right.
Buy these things from me and you'll be better. No, do it in your home with measurable small increments, and you will feel yourself change as a human being internally and externally.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit more about the science. Do vegans have a higher risk for dementia?
I'm going to jump ahead of myself and say no. No, vegans do not have a higher risk for dementia. And the data is quite clear. As a matter of fact, healthy vegans, or people who eat unprocessed plant-based foods, tend to have the lowest risk of Alzheimer's disease. And we've seen that in multiple different studies, including the Adventist Health Study. And the reason is clear. Specific compounds that are found in animal products, specifically saturated fats, and if it's processed animal foods, the nitrates and all the other chemicals that are included in them, they tend to harm not only the vasculature, the blood vessels in the brain, but also the neuronal structures. And study after study shows that if you cut down on meat, chicken, dairy, and you increase your plant-based foods, you actually have better brain structure. Now, this brain of ours is the most vascular organ in our body. And somebody did the calculation, I suppose, when they measured the arteries put end to end in our brain, it could span 400 miles. Now imagine having 400 miles of arteries in your brain. And so the walls of these arteries are very susceptible to the daily damage of eating bad food and meats and cheese and dairy and sources of saturated fats. And we, as neurologists, have even seen, damage to these arteries in very young individuals, let alone people who are older and could be at a higher proclivity for having Alzheimer's disease. We call it white matter disease, damage to the arteries. And even children tend to have it when they're eating a Western diet. So switching to a plant-based diet improves vascular health, improves the connectivity, the neuronal health. It provides the environment for the brain to grow and thrive. And it also improves focus, improves attention, and essentially so many of the pathological processes that are involved in Alzheimer's disease, they are managed better. There are 4 different processes. There's inflammation, oxidation, glucose or energy dysregulation, and lipid or fat dysregulation. And when we consume a plant-based diet, all of these are taken care of and they don't harm the brain.
Now, this usually begs the question because people come and say, what about the deficiency? Iodine deficiency and B12 deficiency, omega-3 deficiency. So we call it the deficiency syndrome of the day. Every day somebody comes in with deficiency syndrome. In a world where we work half a day in a free clinic, in a community clinic, where we see 40-year-olds with strokes, in a world where we see dementia starting early, vascular dementia and Alzheimer's led by vascular factors, are you really worried about B12 deficiency that's not just present in plant-based? It's actually pretty universal. You just have to be aware. You just have to eating more wisely, more broadly, and you will get all your B12. You'll get all your omega-3. And there is actually no evidence that if you eat a plant diet, that you will have any deficiency. But there is evidence that if you eat a plant-based diet, you will eliminate so much of the incredible damaging products. Mm-hmm. Where we, and several studies that they've shown that even teenagers have developed vascular disease eating the Western diet.
Right. I think that's a very important point. Planning your diet, no matter what it is important. And a planned plant-based diet is wonderful. Of course, I mean, keeping an eye on these deficiencies, making sure that vitamin B12 is included, and making sure that you monitor what changes you need to bring at different stages of life. When a child is growing at that stage, it's important for parents to think of adding vitamin B12 and omega-3 fatty acids. When one is at the later stages of their life, it's important also to make sure that there's well absorption of all these vitamins and minerals. So planning is of utmost importance.
Can you please share a bit about the toll that COVID-19 has had on our brains?
Yeah, we were just doing a podcast on this, the fact that the community that's been most devastated by COVID-19 was Alzheimer's patients, for multiple reasons. One is usually Alzheimer's patients are kept in closed quarters and nursing homes where they're just Alzheimer's patients. So once an infection hit one person, it just hit a group of people. Secondarily, because the healthcare system was overwhelmed, and boy, was it overwhelmed. We were in the hospital taking care of patients. It was absolutely overwhelmed. The very normal things that would bring those patients to the hospital, urinary tract infection and things of that nature, were relegated and negated. And so they would be suffering from those. And then that would actually become a major infection and they would pass away from those kind of things. The third thing is, because they have the stigma of dementia, they were not in the primary line of care, although nobody would attest to that, but we know that bias exists. And lastly, and not the least, patients with dementia are suffering the greatest from anxiety. Anxiety is a ubiquitous component of this disease. And then when you add to that loneliness and separation, it's this tsunami. It's this emotional tsunami. And we think that many individuals with dementia and Alzheimer's died because of this loneliness and separation, all of that. For the general population, we're getting this ominous feeling that people who were infected but didn't manifest the full symptomology, it might have affected the vasculature to some extent because it is a vascular disease. And so we worry about that a little bit. And there were higher cases of strokes. You had two women.
Right. Yeah, the strokes have gone up significantly. And it is associated with how this virus changes our blood clotting system, where there's more blood clot formation when somebody's infected with the virus. So it's been pretty devastating to see young individuals who don't necessarily have any vascular risk factors have strokes. And it's been a crazy time, and we're learning more and more about it, and there's more science coming in, but it's been a time of reflection and actually just paying more attention to building a strong immunity and staying healthy as quickly as possible.
The comorbidities that usually significantly increase your risk for death, which is diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, all these comorbidities, which come from lifestyle and are affecting everybody, but especially when it comes to central nervous system, because of the reasons we spoke about, because the brain is so active, it's under much greater attack. Again, the key was that we didn't know how invasive this virus was in every system you can imagine.
Plant-based nutrition can oftentimes be seen as a very serious subject, right? We're going into the data, into the research. We're looking at the impacts that it has on human health, on animal welfare, on our planet. What are some ways that we can remember that plant-based eating is also fun and enjoyable?
Wow. So I'm very passionate about that topic. I feel that food is not just food. Food is not something that we put in our body. Food is the most beautiful of arts because it involves so much of our senses. It's smell, it's taste, it's vision, and it's touch, of course. And I went to cooking school because I think one of the most important public health lessons is to be able to cook. Really, I mean, it sounds dramatic, but if we're all able to learn how to cook maybe 3 to 4 meals, I think we're going to shift our healthcare tremendously. People are afraid of going to the kitchen because I think we just don't have that kind of a lifestyle that supports that beautiful art and that beautiful task. Everybody's in a rush. Everybody's hurrying up. Everybody wants to go to a drive-through to get food because it's always considered as something, as an afterthought almost. Everything else takes precedence and food is an afterthought. Oh, I just have to fill up my belly and get along with my life and so on and so forth. And so coming from the science part where we see the interaction of these beautiful micro and macronutrients and how it interacts with our blood vessels, with our cells, trying to create a picture in everybody's minds about the importance of the food choices that they make, and then come up with the final statement to say it is really important to eat healthy food, and the way you can do it is have control over it. Have the tools ready at your home that you have the capacity to create a beautiful meal to nourish your body. And I think it's a perfect form of self-love. Everybody wants to go to a resort or a spa or go to a therapist. I think eating good food is the best therapy.
Food becomes deprivation, it becomes failure.
Right.
Ayesha was in Columbia University, the hardest fellowship in the country. So in the morning, she would be in the ICU. At night, she would be learning cooking. I'm her sous chef. I'm terrible, but I'm her sous chef.
No, you're not.
But it's about making sure that people don't feel deprived.
Right.
As much as the science is important, application of that in a realistic way is important. We have to make sure that we know our audience and adapt the food according to their culture, their background, their family, their needs, their resources. And if it's a top-down didactic professorial way of telling people eat this, not that, it's going to fail over and over and over again. And all we get is the next talk or seminar. But so at our research program in the beach cities, one of the central elements is cooking classes.
Right. We actually have cooking classes online. Everything is online
in
now.
fact, this venue is
right here.
Yes.
And just like you're sitting right there, I have my kitchen table here, and I have about 50 to 100 individuals at a time cutting onions with me, spending enough time to smell the herbs. We got some rosemary going on over there, and to smell the beautiful smell of these herbs, putting together some tomatoes and onions and carrots and baking it, and see how food changes when you roast it versus air fry it. It's so beautiful, just the experience of really immersing yourself in this beautiful art. And like Dean said, it's practicing, showing, cooking together, getting involved, and really enjoying the results of it.
The common thread in both of your careers is a focus on women's empowerment. We'd love to learn a little bit more about that and why it became such a central focus for both of you.
That's an amazing question.
I would like to take that on.
Please.
As an honor of women. No. So I think, and it's not what I think, it's the data shows from work of Professor Yunus, who won the Nobel Prize on micro loans.
The father of microcredits, yes.
Microcredits and so many others. When it comes to public health, $1 spent on women is at the minimum 4 times more effective than $1 spent anywhere else. So one of my prides in life, and I say after that, everything is icing on the cake, was my work in Afghanistan, where I did what I call social jujitsu. And I in Taliban infested places, I was the deputy minister, and I went there. I said, we're going to bring healthcare to you, and we're going to train some nurses and midwives. Remember, there are no hospitals, there are no clinics, nothing. And 1 out of 4 children are dying at the time. 1 out of 6 women are dying from pregnancy-related complications in the worst manner you can imagine. And of course, the leader said, no, absolutely not. The women, I said, no, they're not going to do anything. They're going to deal with your women and children only, your own women and children. I said, okay. So we went there, trained 20,000 of them in villages, 6th grade education. We taught them 3 things: ampicillin for upper respiratory, ORS infections, ORS, oral rehydration fluid, because most of the children that died were from diarrhea, and you can't give a person that has infectious diarrhea water because it actually accelerates the process.
So we taught those girls how to make oral rehydration solution.
Correct.
1 liter of boiled water, a fist of sugar, and a pinch of salt, and to give it to the child who had diarrhea to make sure that they survive and not get dehydrated.
That made more than 90% of children survive. And then to differentiate between spotting and bleeding in pregnant women, because that's 4 days ride on a horse or a donkey. It's impossible.
To the next hospital.
So that was part of the deal, which is healthcare, which is enough. But the other part that I knew was that we built their huts in conspicuous places, and we knew that in 3 months, who would get sick? You know who would get sick? That man, that big man of the village. And he would go to this young girl like this, in a prostrate position, asking help. No political argument, no cultural argument. It's a jujitsu. You just change the dynamics. And it was so effective. All these women became leaders without ever bringing up the concept of leadership. It is critical. Women are center of healthcare. Our work in the churches and the faith communities is going to be throughout the country, and hopefully the world is going to be around women in their homes, in their communities, leading this healthcare revolution. And more importantly, when these women take care of their child, they also take care of their neighbors and the neighbors' neighbors, and so on and so forth. So there's no question that for healthcare, actually across the board, politics and everything, I don't, if it's politically incorrect, I don't care. Women should be taking care of all leadership, but definitely in healthcare, it's the most effective way to approach this. And I'm so proud that Ayesha is now going to be getting her PhD in women's leadership in healthcare and around this concept.
When you train women to become ambassadors of health in their community, I mean, I love men, I appreciate them, but women tend to be great at sharing that information. It goes down to their children and community members and family, and they can be great representation of that health. And I'm so excited and so privileged to have the opportunity to work with different women in communities, especially one of the projects that we are working on is working in Black churches in South LA and across the country to train women to go out into their communities and talk about the importance of dietary changes, nutrition, healthy eating, prevention of brain diseases, and not just Alzheimer's, but improving focus and attention, depression and anxiety, and so on and so forth. I think women are at the center of health.
And talk about empathy and change. 75% of plant-based world is women.
Right.
There's a reason for that.
Last question. What would you both love to eat later today?
What would I love to eat? I mean, to be honest, this is not me just being, cliche, and everything Ayesha makes is with love and incredible focus on taste. That's a critical thing. And so everything she makes, but day to day depends. Sometimes it's sushi. Sometimes it's plant-based pizza, vegan pizza. Sometimes it's the burgers. But what did you call it? In the book,
Totally Possible.
Totally
Burger.
Possible Burger, which is the healthiest burger you can imagine. She was on several national shows, and she made key lime pie, which was not only incredibly tasty, but it was healthy. So to be honest, it's not about what would I like to have. It's like, how can I have the tasty version? And it's there. It's all there. Today, I think it's going to be pizza.
Really?
It's going to be pizza.
I think it's National Pizza Day anyway today. So yes, we're going to have pizza. But
Yes.
I was planning on actually making some butternut squash enchiladas. And I make some really nice butternut squash and black bean enchiladas and corn tortillas with this beautiful enchilada sauce. And I make a cashew-based queso, which is spicy and it's like very cheesy. And I add some tapioca.
Okay, maybe I want that. I want that.
And I bake it. And I used to bake it in a smaller dish. And then the kids are growing because they're teenagers. I'm like, Mom, we need a bigger dish. So we have bigger dish. So it's not this anymore. It's like probably this big.
Yeah.
And
Plus Obi.
Plus Obi. Obi loves having some squash with brown rice and some beans. Obi, our dog, he's lovely. So yeah, no, I went to cooking school because I was passionate about the importance of food. I can't be sitting there and talking to my patients and just giving them aspirin and cholesterol pills and, telling them to make sure that they take their medications, which are important. Medication are very, very important. And especially when people are dealing with diseases, but 80% of the time should be spent on prevention. So giving them recipes, showing them how to cook, and then planning things with a family and having all these amazing plant-based foods ready. That's the perfect way to live and a healthy way to live.
The global pandemic has changed our world forever. Millions of lives have been lost, and tragically, it's not over yet. And here's something that's really kind of important. Some of the biggest COVID-19 risk factors are what's called comorbidities. These include obesity, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and other chronic illnesses. And the good news here is that whether or not you ever get COVID-19, the food you eat and the choices you make today have the power to shape your destiny and your health for the rest of your life. Right now, it's more important than ever to clean up your diet, to eat the foods that support your immune system. Scientific studies show us that eating the right foods can help you prevent and even reverse cancer, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune conditions, obesity, can help prevent Alzheimer's. And these foods really are your number one way to strengthen your heart, your brain, your microbiome, and your immune system. They can help you to have lasting energy, more satisfying sleep, and to set you up for a long, happy life. I'm Ocean Robbins, host of the Food Revolution Summit, and I want you to know the truth about your food. That's why my dad and colleague, 2 million copy best-selling author John Robbins and I have teamed up with 24 of the world's most brilliant, revolutionary experts to bring you this year's biggest breakthroughs in food and health. And because this information is so important, right now more than ever before, we're offering it to you completely for free. In this, the 10th anniversary Food Revolution Summit, you will find out what's really going on behind the scenes in our food system. You'll find out which foods you need to avoid and what the leading edge of medical science is discovering about how you can optimize your immune health, your brain health, and your heart health. Most importantly, you're going to find hope for your future and real, actionable, scientifically grounded solutions that can improve your life and your world starting today. I can't wait to share it all with you. Remember, it's completely free, so go ahead and sign up right on this page. All you need to do is enter your name and email to reserve your spot right now. And I'll see you in the summit.